on your as deputy mayor.
Oh, really?
We want you to have all of the accolades that should be coming to you,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay. Oh, I did not get any notification from either Robin, Melinda, or Yolanda council members. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Okay, welcome everyone to the Auburn City Council study session, January 10th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. Call to order. For the public participation, this meeting is being held in person and virtually. The City Council will be meeting virtually. Teresa, can you please call roll?
Deputy Mayor Jay Raj,
I am here.
Councilmember Baggett,
Here.
Councilmember Baldwin, Councilmember Baldwin,
You're muted.
Here.
Councilmember Brown,
Here.
Councilmember Malinga, Councilmember Malinga, Councilmember Stearns,
Here.
Councilmember Trout Manuel,
I'm here.
Thank you, Teresa. I believe there are no announcements, reports, or presentations. Teresa, do we have any agenda modification?
There are no agenda modifications this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor, if you are able to speak up or turn your volume up, we are struggling with hearing you here in council chambers. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's move into our next agenda, ordinance number 6846. Oh, sorry, 6844. It is
Deputy Mayor, Deputy Mayor, I think there's an item on the agenda prior to that for the ARPA funds review and modification.
That's what I found out that I was missing, so I went ahead and said that ordinance number 6844 that is being chaired by Director Thomas.
No, Deputy Mayor, it should be item 3A, ARPA funds review and modification is item number 3A prior to getting to the ordinances.
Item number 3A, ARPA funds review and modification. Okay. Deputy Thomas, yes, sorry. Director Thomas, it's you.
I'll take the deputy title anytime. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Council, I'm Director Thomas, Finance Director, and I am going to be sharing my screen to go over our ARPA funds review And was I successful for the first time right away? It only takes me 2 years to get this down, but I finally have it. I'm here tonight to go over our status of our American Rescue Plan funding, also known as ARPA. If you recall, Council adopted an Ordinance 6832 back in August, allocating the city's $14.7 million in rescue plan funds. And I'm here to provide an update to you on where we're at as of the end of the year. So just a quick overview, since a lot has happened and a lot of the details may not necessarily be fresh in your mind, since you had, and we also have a new council member on board just to kind of help frame the conversation for tonight. The city was awarded $14.7 million in ARPA funds. The city has to have these funds obligated by 12/31/2024, which means we need to be under contract or some sort of contractual obligation by December 31st, 2024. And those obligated amounts must be fully spent by December 31st, 2026. ARPA also further allows that this money can really be spent in 7 primary ways: supporting the public health, response and supporting public health, mitigating negative economic impacts, services to disproportionately impacted communities, premium pay to essential workers. I asterisk this. There's been a lot of conversation surrounding this, but just as a reminder that our own state constitution actually has further prohibitions on how we can spend that money, and it disallows retro payments for premium pay to essential workers. The federal law is more broad. In this instance, that's generally not the case when it comes to federal dollars, but in this grant, it is actually more liberal than our state law, and we need to revert to following our state law. It also allows for infrastructure projects, but specifically this is water and sewer infrastructure projects, as well as broadband infrastructure projects, so very large utility type projects. Also allows for revenue replacements. So this means there's a specific revenue calculation to help us determine the most amount that we can claim under this category, but it's to help make us whole for any revenue that we have lost as a direct result of COVID. And then the final provision is for administrative costs. This is either really kind of twofold, is administering the ARPA funds and making sure that we're spending the money properly and allowably, that we have all of our appropriate backup documentation that we need to substantiate the $14.7 million that we've spent. But it also allows for data and analysis to make sure that we are getting money to the right communities, and that we're helping connect those communities with the money that we have actually allocated for them. So what we landed on, this is the graph to the right, is how the council had ultimately decided to spend the $14.7 million in those 7 primary categories. The first 2 categories I have highlighted in green. Those are actually both one category, which is supporting public health, response. But when we were putting together our specific project list, we really kind of divided it further into general public safety response, public health response, and then the housing and mental health services as our public health safety response. To get to these numbers, we had pulled together an ad hoc committee of 3 council members. That ad hoc committee helped the mayor and the directors really go through with a fine-tooth comb and limit 30 project lists. So we identified to 30 projects. They were pretty general in scope with a pretty high level initial project cost estimates. And based on the projects that we identified in this list, they got grouped into one of the 7 allowable categories. And then based on which categories they fell into, that is how we determined the amount of money that would be going into those main categories overall. I also want to caveat it with, we knew The directors know, the mayor knows, as well as the ad hoc committee is very well aware that that was a list that we put together based on our needs back in August. Most of those needs are still relevant, but we do anticipate between now and December 31st, 2024, we'll probably need to be making changes to this list, whether programs become obsolete, whether project budgets end up being greater than we had originally estimated, or in some cases, some of those project budgets might actually be less than we initially estimated. We expect that we'll need to make some changes to the ordinance and how we allocate the money between those 7 buckets between now and the end of 2024. But in the meantime, this is our spending plan. With that, these are the 12 projects that are currently in the budget. So just because the council has set aside money for these main spending categories for ARPA money, we don't necessarily have all of that money in the budget yet. So we've got sitting in restricted revenue in an ARPA fund, but not necessarily budgeted and committed yet. With the exception of these 12 projects, we had budget amendments 3 and 4 in November that council adopted. And in those budget amendments, we had asked council to give staff the authority to start working towards these 12 projects. We've got the vaccination incentive program, the utility assistance program, the body camera program, the SCORE revenue loss, the neighborhood streetlight program, the neighborhood traffic calming program, the sidewalk program, and recreation access grants, an enhancement to our current human services grants. So this just supplements what we currently are already providing in human services grants on an annual basis. The Dykstra footbridge, the grant coordinator to help us coordinate and manage all of these projects and all of our ARPA funds, and then park improvement grants. I want to note of the $6,078,852 that the council had approved, not all of this is in the 2021 and the 2022 budget, that this does span over 4 years. So some of these items, although they won't necessarily get spent, didn't all get spent at the end of 2021, and we don't anticipate we're going to be spending all of the money in 2022, we will have carry forward amounts in the 23 and 24 budgets on a lot of these programs, on some of the larger programs in particular. This is just a quick snapshot of what's left over after the council adopted Budget Amendment 3 and Budget Amendment 4. There's still 18 programs or 18 projects that haven't been budgeted yet. And this is their breakdown between the ARPA funding categories. So a little over $8.6 million. We still have a pretty good idea of how we want to spend that money, but we have not yet budgeted for it. So the project status of those 12 projects that I just ran through really quickly, we've actually only spent money through December 31st, 21. I don't know where December 31st, 15 came from. We're not going back in time. But we've actually only spent money so far on 4 of the programs by the end of the year. That's the vaccination incentive program. This was a program to incentivize city employees to become fully vaccinated. If city employees were fully vaccinated by December 17th and had submitted the applicable paperwork, they received a $125 incentive check on their December 23rd paycheck. Well, it wasn't a special check run, but they received it on payday. After taxes, it totaled about $100 for the average employee. 245 employees of our approximately 450 full-time employees were able to take advantage of this first round. We do expect to offer a second and third wave to give employees either a chance to become fully vaccinated or to get all of their required paperwork in order to receive the incentive payment. The utility assistance program was a program that we had offered for all of our city utility users. In October, we had over 3,500 city utility accounts in arrears which totaled $1.7 million in past due water, sewer, storm, and or solid waste balances. So what we hoped to achieve through this program was to offer any account payer that would attest that they had been negatively financially impacted in any way by COVID, that they would qualify to have 50% of their outstanding balance paid with COVID relief funds. By December 31st, we had only 236 account holders take us up on this program, totaling $196,596 in COVID relief funds allocated towards the utility assistance program. Interestingly enough, of those past due accounts, those 3,500 past due accounts, everybody actually has gotten current as of, or at least into a payment plan by the end of the year. However, many account holders just didn't take advantage of the assistance program, which was very interesting, not necessarily entirely surprising, because we had similar programs that we had offered 2 times previously since the beginning of COVID, and we had very little response. Even though every time we had customers call and ask, we heavily advertised it, encouraged account holders to sign up for the program, but we just had a really low participation rate for whatever reason. But this actually, even though 236 accounts seems low, is a huge success compared to our previous experience over the last 2 rounds, utility assistance rounds that we had provided over the last 2 years. Body cameras, we are getting close. We have received almost all of our hardware. Most of it has been delivered. The first round of training took place last week. The department-wide training takes place the week of March 21st to the 25th, with the scheduled rollout anticipated April 1st. And then the SCORE revenue loss, just as a reminder, what this is, our participation in the SCORE jail has us being responsible for our portion of the ownership, which is based on how much we actually use the jail. Over the years of 2020 and 2021, SCORE jail had experienced a loss in their contract revenue from the agencies that aren't participating agencies and participate in owning a portion of the jail. And due to the reduced revenue from those agencies, from those contract agencies, there's still operating costs and there's still overhead costs for SCORE. And so as an owner agency, we needed to pick up our portion. Our portion of that lost revenue was $825,000. And so we used $800,000 of our ARPA funds to pay for that revenue loss. And we paid that bill back in November. So far, spent through the end of the year, we spent a little over $1.5 million of our COVID, or of our ARPA funds that we received from the Department of Treasury. So I had one more thing. This is, normally this would be the time that I would ask for council to consider any changes in the ordinance and the reallocation of funds. However, we don't really have any discussion that would require ordinance changes. But I do have a couple of things that I do want to open up for council discussion to make sure that staff does have the authorization to continue moving down the path that we're currently moving down. One is the savings that we had in the body camera category. We had originally allocated $1.3 million towards the body cameras for police officers. After that was back in August, we had originally been hoping to use $1.3 million. With ARPA guidelines, though, only $580,000 was really allowable for ARPA funds. So that left us with approximately $700,000 in that very specific project category for body cameras. And what we want to ask council is to use of that savings in the body camera category, $600,000 to be spent towards a retention pay for the police guild contract that was ratified last week. It wouldn't change the reporting category for ARPA. We would use that money, we would use the ARPA funding for it, and it would still be reported in the services to disproportionately impacted communities. So it wouldn't require an ARPA ordinance amendment at all. just an understanding by council and staff that we are reallocating money from body cameras to retention pay. The second part that I wanted council to consider was the pre-authorization for increasing our police signing bonuses. This is something that is really happening regionally. Many local municipal police forces are increasing their signing bonuses. We would like to increase ours to $20,000. Back in August, when we were putting our ARPA spending plan together, we did earmark $200,000 to be used for signing bonuses, and that falls into the $7 million, the $7 million bucket that council adopted for services to disproportionately impacted communities. We're not really asking for any changes from council other than that we don't have this budgeted yet, and so we're asking to go ahead and move forward, allow HR to move forward with their advertising campaign to advertise a $20,000 signing bonus, and then we would follow up with an official budget amendment in March, allocating the ARPA money into HR for signing bonus purposes. So I'm going to turn it over to the Deputy Mayor for discussion and questions.
Thank you, Jamie. Your presentation was great, right to the point, and I understood where the money is going. So I'm going to open it up for discussion to the council members. Any takers?
Councilmember Stearns has a question, and also Councilmember Baggett.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Jamie. Wow, that's a lot to pack in there. Really appreciate it. I have a couple questions. So in terms of the utility assistance program, it sounds like not everyone who really could have taken advantage of that did. And you had said we had done a lot of advertising and trying to get the word out. Have we ever been successful in that? And my computer just went out.
We can still see you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my computer. There I go. I'm back in. Do you guys have any ideas about what else we could try to get people to, take a bite of the apple? If that's the right word.
Yeah, it was an interesting situation. I think originally we had the last two go rounds. I think the low participation rate had to do that there wasn't any enforcement piece of paying a bill. So there wasn't really a need to act right away because we weren't doing water shutoffs until December was our first round of water shutoffs. So I just don't think that folks felt the urgency to participate in the program at the time, because if they hadn't been paying their bill, they just had continued not paying their bill. I think at this point, this round was tied to shutoffs, to water shutoffs, to help incentivize those payments before year end. And I think that's why we had a higher participation rate. I think in a lot of cases, some landlords, they made the payment and just didn't take advantage. So I don't know if there were some write-off situations that maybe landlords were taking advantage of, and they didn't want to necessarily take the assistance payment. Others just made their payment. I mean, we made it very clear. Like every turn, they would even when we got phone calls, we said, if you don't have to make the full payment, you don't have to. You can sign up for the program. And some people just opted not to, for whatever reason. It was, and in most cases, nobody really gave us a reason as to why they were choosing not to participate.
Oh, and is that program still available, or is it over?
Yes.
And if I wanted to look that up, where would I go?
Well, it's on our city webpage, or on the utilities webpage, as well as all of the mail communication that we have sent with past due notices, So if you've received, it would have only been if you received a past due notice. So if in all the past due notices that we've sent, all of the information is there. I do want to caveat that though, it's only available if you have a past due balance. So it was for those accounts that had gone into arrears during COVID.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you.
Council Member Baggett.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a couple of quick questions here regarding the body camera allocation. I noticed that we have about $150,000+ left over from the residual amount. And you probably explained this earlier, but how are we reallocating that balance after we allocate the 600,000?
Well, and Chief Collier might be able to better answer this. I don't think we've actually spent all of the money yet that we plan to spend because we haven't received all of the hardware and equipment. There is still one batch of equipment. We haven't paid that. There's still an outstanding invoice to be paid on that. Any additional savings that is left over after we've paid our final invoice, a decision hasn't been made. We haven't made a recommendation. We haven't looked very closely. I would imagine that there's going to be savings across several different projects that and extra money at the end of some of these projects for reallocation consideration. So the short answer to your question is no, nothing's been decided yet.
Okay. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. We'll keep an eye on it.
Okay.
Thank you, Council Member Baggett. Council Member Brown.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a couple of questions. First one concerning the SCORE backfilling for revenue shortfalls. So I assume, number one, that is an ongoing condition that we have to look at as far as the SCORE deficit of revenue going forward. And the ARPA funds are one-time funds, and will they be available this next year for funding of any shortfalls?
So right now, that $825,000 shortfall was a one-time shortfall.
Okay.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that I know that Devin at SCORE, she's the executive director of SCORE. She works very hard working with those contract agencies, working on making sure that we're generating the adequate amount of revenue, or at least the revenue that we're budgeting for. So we don't have those budget shortfalls in the future. Barring anything unexpected, I don't expect that we would have another major revenue shortfall again. It's possible, but it's not expected at this point. And moving forward, if we needed to come back to council, I think that would be a perfect example of a project that we might want the council to reconsider to bump towards the top of the list as a priority project to cover.
Sounds great. And then number two, on the sheet that's in front of us right now, spending category discussions. I'm curious about the second bulleted point under the reallocation of the 600,000 for body cameras, where it says the retention pay would fall into the same ARPA funding category as body cameras. And then in parentheses, it says services to disproportionately impacted communities. I don't quite understand the point that you're making there. How does services to disproportionately impacted communities, how does that figure in here?
So this is the Department of Treasury and their plan for allowable costs. Services to disproportionately impacted communities is one of those 7 primary categories for allowable spending. And a subcategory within that is the public safety response that has the increased public safety need as a result of COVID. So both the body cameras and the retention pay bonus or the retention pay would fall under that category of services to disproportionately impacted communities based on the requirements and the language in the ARPA guidance that we've received from the Department of Treasury.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions from council?
Councilmember
Councilmember
Baldwin
Yolanda.
has a question.
Thank you,
Uh,
Deputy
who-
Mayor. Did you say council member?
Yeah,
Yolanda?
I said Councilmember Chapman Yell is what I said.
Okay. Thank you very much,
then-
Deputy Mayor. Jamie, I had a question related to the same question as Councilmember Stearns. I'm glad you cleared that up, that it was to people that were behind default on their payment. Are we sending this out in all the different languages? Because that's kind of odd that they're not applying for it since they're, not caught up on their payments.
We don't, other than what we, in any translation services that we have on our website, we do not have multiple languages. Or other than what we normally, our normal translation services that we provide in our utility bills. And I'm not so sure it's the account. We haven't done a huge a breakdown in the census areas for the past due utility account balances, but they run the gamut as far as the different types of account holders.
Oh,
Yeah,
explain that a little bit more.
they're not all in one socioeconomic group. They're all over the place. Like I said, a lot of them were landlords, and I think they were just holding off on paying as long as they could on paying the bill, and then they didn't want to claim any COVID impacts to take the assistance money.
Okay, that clears it up a little bit more. And then you mentioned that we still have some money in the ARPA funds right now. How much is that that we haven't spent yet or allocated?
Well, we've got it all allocated. We have just a little over, or we've got $8.6 million unbudgeted, but we have them allocated. So the council has allocated them into the primary categories, and we have 30 projects that we've identified. We've only budgeted for 12 of them so far.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Jamie. That cleared up a lot of it for me.
Thank you, Councilmember Yolanda. Councilmember Baldwin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have two areas of questions. First, as with others in the area of the utilities assistance, of those 3,500 of the 3,500 that had been identified, you said 236 had taken advantage of the program. For the outstanding group, are there any number of households that we know are at risk of having their utility cut off at this stage?
So are you talking water and sewer utilities?
Yes.
Yeah, so we did go through a round of shutoffs, and so that was how we were incentivizing people to actually take advantage of the program, and B, to begin making payments. So up until September 30th, there was a shutoff moratorium. So nobody was at risk. But in order to start getting those account balances paid up, we had to start, unfortunately, advertising a shutoff. We had, I think, just a little over 400 accounts that did end up getting shut off. Everybody, with the exception of about 15 accounts, have been turned back on. Those accounts that haven't been turned on are currently vacant, or no one's living there.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Everybody has back on.
Just trying to make sure that if we've got funds sitting there, that we don't have any folks out there without water and sewer. So, okay, great.
Absolutely.
And then the second area of of interest that I had is in the area of the pre-authorization for the signing bonuses, looking at ARPA funds, which are specific and unique one-time funds dealing with the issues that have stemmed as a result of the pandemic and as a result of the COVID virus that is still very present within our community. Taking the tack that, yes, we definitely want to recruit and bring in, talented officers into our city and bring them on board. I do think accountability and responsibility are really key characteristics that I would want in those hires that are coming in. If we're going to be redirecting some of the ARPA specific funds, I would love to find out if we could make a stipulation or a requirement for receiving that additional bonus pay or incentive pay to be inclusive of proof of vaccination, as I believe that that sub area for services is dealing with public safety. And I think that one of the best ways we can do that right now for protecting citizens within our community, as well as our law enforcement officers, is to make sure that we really do incentivize that above and beyond even the current $125 incentive that the city has performed. I think that as we set that standard would be a good measure for us to take. And then in support of that, I would highlight the fact that according to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, the virus has killed more police officers nationwide last year than all other causes combined. So as a means of protecting our own officers and making sure that they stay safe and healthy and cared for by our community, I think that that's something that we should really keep at the forefront if we're going to be using this for incentives to retain and hire. Thank you.
And I know that our Human Resources Director, Candace Martinson, was not able to attend with us tonight, but I'll make sure I pass along your comments to her as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Baldwin. Is there any more questions? Anybody? Okay. So let's moving on. Oh, Chris.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I just quickly wanted to follow up on Councilmember Baldwin's question. It's more of a process question, but when we're talking about making changes to the proposed contract, that's through negotiation, I assume. And who's on the city's, who I guess if that's the right word, our negotiating team? How does that, who represents the city? I'm just curious. Thanks.
So our Human Resources Director, our Assistant Human Resources Director, and the Chief typically sit in on those negotiations. Mayor, did I miss anybody?
No, that's who sits in typically from the city's side, management side of the contract.
Okay, great, thanks. And is that like in a city, is that a city code thing, or is that just a policy?
Nope, that's practical application.
Oh, okay, so it's not set in the code. All right, thanks.
Thank you, everyone. That was a very good discussion. Thank you, Jamie. Going forward, we've got resolution 6844, 6846, 6847, end of year capital project report overview of Bridges community. It's going to be handled by or chaired by Chris Stearns. Get it? Did you guys get it?
Yes, that's under special focus area that's chaired by Councilmember Stearns.
Yep.
God, I'm still never used to turning my microphone on. Yeah, great. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We do, in fact, have a special focus area. And we will be going over a few items. Ooh, I see the bridges are up. Oh, I can't wait for that one. But we'll start off with ordinance number 6844. And for that, in the next few items, we'll turn it over to our director, Ingrid Gaub. Thank you, Director.
Thank you, council member and all council members tonight. So tonight, for the first two items on the special focus area agenda, which are both ordinances, Lisa Tobin, who is our utilities engineering manager, is going to be giving you a very brief presentation of the purpose of those code changes. These are code changes to our utility codes, one related to water and the other one related to storm drainage. So Lisa, do you want to go ahead and share that?
Thank you, Director Gabb. Let me share my screen. So are you all seeing that?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you so much. Good evening, council members, Deputy Mayor and Mayor. The first item tonight, as Ingrid mentioned, is that it's related to that action that you took last week, ratifying the ending of the water emergency for the Hidden Valley Braunwood neighborhood. As you may recall, last summer, the high irrigation water use and the drought and the heat that we had in the Auburn area put that isolated neighborhood, which relies on a single well, in danger of running out of water. We found that the current city code didn't let us respond quickly enough to take emergency action, and it didn't really provide us with the necessary enforcement actions that we needed to do to ensure that we could provide or keep the community in water. So we're asking you to consider, asking you to consider a change to Auburn City Code Chapter 1314 that would better align the city's response with our adopted water shortage contingency plan that lays out various measures to ensure that we can respond quickly. It would help improve the simplicity and efficiency of our procedures. It would authorize the mayor to work directly with Director Gaub in Public Works to develop a response so that we can move quickly to keep our customers in water. And it would provide us with more rapid enforcement to prevent water use violations. And so what we're asking you to do next week, next Tuesday, is to consider adoption of this ordinance. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lisa. Do we have any questions, council members? Yes, I'm terrible at this. So I believe Council Member Baldwin was first, so I'll go to Council Member Baldwin.
Thank you, Councilmember Stearns. So with the offending residents, given that there were only 12 households, do you have a percentage of those households that were found to be in overuse?
There were about 25% of the households were using more water. We found that education went a long way. I think people don't really understand how much water they're using. And once we were able to meet with those customers, and we spent a lot of time one-on-one educating them about how their water was being used, they were all very responsive, and we were really very impressed with how much they were able to curtail their use through the fall and into the winter. And we're now working with them to make sure that we stay within our limits this coming year and in future years.
Okay. I was going to say, for that neighborhood, would it make sense to maybe recommend or work with another city department to do like a CDBG block grant for drip irrigation or anything that would, no? Okay. All right. Are there any other commercial properties that are using that same well, or is it strictly residential?
It's strictly residential.
Okay. And then last question on that is, I noticed in the language changes that we had struck the section that was tied to, I believe, communication. And we do have a section for enforcement authority and penalties for violation. But it doesn't note in the language changes that notification should be in place before potential enforcement. So my only recommendation would be to add a clause that would allow a requirement for notification prior to any enforcement.
In our water shortage contingency plan, which was adopted as part of our comprehensive plan, it focuses a lot on education and notification. And so by aligning this more with that plan, then we'll be utilizing education and notification as part of our response rather than proceeding directly to enforcement.
Okay. And the education, I think, is fantastic. I was talking about notification specific to the announcement of an emergency.
Yeah, so I think as part of that water contingency plan, that is part of the requirement, is that we do that notice when we actually go to an emergency standpoint, and we would make sure that that notification happens through that process. What we're trying to avoid here is having duplication of requirements between that contingency plan and what's in the code, and handling the administrative procedures in that contingency plan and the policy processes that we need to do within the code, if that helps.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I like to see faster response when there's drought and water issues. Thanks. I'm all set.
Thank you, Councilmember Baldwin, and thank you, Lisa and Director Gal, for those great responses. I saw that Councilmember Brown had his hand raised. Perhaps he would like to ask his question now.
Thank you, Chairman Stearns, but my question got answered, so thank you.
Yeah, they're free. You can ask another one. I'm just kidding. All right. But just as a side note, I mean, whenever I hear water usage, I'm always like drawn back to the memories of our teenage daughters who apparently had the capacity to do laundry every single day. Our water bills, that was our incentive, not to have that curtailed. Great. So next we have up Ordinance number 6846, and we'll go back to Director Gobb.
And we're going to have Lisa go through that one with you as well. Very short changes that we need to make to the stormwater code.
Thank you, Director Gobb. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So as Ingrid mentioned, this is related to our stormwater utility. We need to comply with the stormwater utility permit requirements to adopt the new 2019 ecology manual. This is a large volume that contains guidelines and requirements for use by utilities such as ours. What we are planning to do is to adopt this new manual this month to incorporate Auburn's supplemental manual called the Surface Water Management Manual that governs the guidelines for managing stormwater here in Auburn. The new ecology manual is a complete reorganization of the previous manual that our own manual was based on, the 2014 manual, and it has a lot of new information in it. So as we were proceeding with this update and incorporating our own surface water manual with the ecology manual, we found that there were some conflicts in city code that we'd like to resolve. Specifically, we want to eliminate the year reference to the ecology manual because now we want to adopt the 2019 manual, and I'm sure in the future that ecology will be updating the manual and we would just like to eliminate the year of the reference and just use the most current manual that we've adopted. The other changes are that there are portions of the city code that refer to certain sections in the ecology manual, and because of their reorganization, those sections have now changed. So we're proposing to make the city code much more general, just to refer to the manual. And that way, again, if it reorganizes or those code sections are no longer applicable, the city code won't have to be updated. And so as with the other ordinance, we're asking you to consider adoption of this ordinance next Tuesday at your next regularly scheduled meeting. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
There we go. Sorry, apologize, computer issues again. So do we have any questions about this ordinance? It seems pretty straightforward and I do not see any hands raised. So, outstanding job. Thank you. So we'll go on to our next item of business, which is ordinance number 6847. And I'll turn that back over to.
All right, thank you. So I'm actually going to have City Engineer and Assistant Director Jacob Sweeting go through a discussion with you about what we're proposing to do for M Street Northwest and the street use restriction that we are asking council to consider. So Jacob, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you, Ingrid. Good evening, Council, Mayor. I will attempt to share my screen here. Just give me 1 second, please. Okay, do we have success?
We do.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the delay on that. It's been a little bit since I was on this presentation format. So I want to briefly discuss with the council the ordinance 6847 tonight. So ordinance 6847 would modify the city code, chapter 1028. That portion of the code focuses on street use restrictions. Currently, the code only has one restriction in place, and that is on B Street Southeast in downtown, just off of Main Street. The code establishes that area or that portion of B Street as a pedestrian only area. So that is what creates the B Street Plaza as we know it today. So we're proposing with this ordinance to add additional code that would close M Street Northwest and 29th Street Northwest between 15th Street and 29th Street. It's the area that's shown in red on the map that's on page 38 of your packet. We are proposing to close that roadway to all vehicular and pedestrian traffic, except for access by the property owners and their guests, as well as by the city and emergency services and utility companies that have utilities along the corridor. So why are we proposing to close the road? Well, currently this section of roadway, it doesn't really provide any connectivity. It is closed at Mill Creek. So just towards the top of the map where Mill Creek crosses 29th Street Northwest, the roadway is closed and there are permanent barricades in place. So there's not a full connection all the way from M Street to 29th between 15th and Ron Crockett. So it's really just a dead end road that only provides access to those properties. So the properties themselves, they don't really benefit from any type of public access that's provided by those roadways. In fact, we've talked to nearly all the property owners along this roadway and they fully support closure of the roadway. So the challenge with this roadway is that we're constantly seeing illegal dumping. We have vehicles that are dumped there, garbage, all sorts of material and debris that creates quite the headache for the city as well as the adjacent property owners. But more importantly, Mill Creek is an environmentally sensitive area and Mill Creek passes right through this area. And when all that garbage is there, it presents a potential hazard to that environmental area. So we have many times gone out and cleaned up garbage along the roadway. In fact, a few weeks ago, city crews cleaned, I think Ingrid, was it somewhere in the realm of about 40 tons of trash and debris from the roadway?
Yeah, I think it was about that amount, maybe a little bit more.
Okay. So I'll show you some pictures of that here in just a minute, but the amount of garbage and material that's being dumped there is just horrendous. And it's really a challenge for both the city and the adjacent property owners. So it's really hard to keep up on the street as far as keeping our eyes on it and trying to dissuade people from dumping the material here just because of its remote nature. It's off kind of the beaten path and doesn't have a lot of vehicular traffic on it. So it's hard to catch people and actually try to enforce the no dumping requirements. So here is a picture along M Street Northwest. And on the left, you see a before, and on the right is an after picture. So this is one of the cleanup operations that I referenced that just happened a few weeks ago. So you see the amount of just of trash material that was all piled up along the roadway. And then on the right is kind of what it looked like afterwards. And we want to keep it that way. And we think that the best way to do that is really just to close the road. And here's another picture of just all the trash and garbage that was left there. Just for reference, this would be facing north, I believe. State Route 167 is on your left, and Emerald Downs would be far to the right, just off the page. So I'm gonna go back a little bit here. Currently, after we did those cleanup operations, we did put up temporary barricades at just towards the south end of where the closure would be located. And so the road has been closed to all except local access. Those barricades, unfortunately, can be moved out of the way. And so we would like to pursue something a little more permanent that would keep people from going back there and dumping trash and other things. So we've actually worked with one of the property owners who has volunteered to actually construct a gate across the roadway after its closure. And the gate would have a lock on it that would have access provided to all the property owners, to emergency services, the city, and the utilities, like I referenced before. So next Tuesday, we will take this ordinance to council for consideration. And assuming if it was passed, then we would start working with the property owner to install the permanent barricade or the gate across the roadway. And then eventually later in the year, we are exploring the option of pursuing a right-of-way vacation, which would actually permanently remove the roadway from right-of-way, and more than likely it would turn back that property to the adjacent property owners. And that is the end of my presentation. Be happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Jacob. Do we have any questions? And I see a couple. Council Member Trout Manuel.
Thank you, Council Member Stearns. I don't have a question. I just have a statement. Thank you for finally doing something out there, because we have been getting a lot of comments. So I am just so excited that we are going to do something out there. So thank you.
Thank you, Council Member Trout Manuel. Deputy Mayor Jarosh.
Thank you, Council Member Chair Christians. Jacob, my next question is do we have any plans of implementing a trespass ordinance over there?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last part of that.
Sorry, a trespass ordinance.
There's, as far as I know, there's a trespass ordinance hasn't been part of the discussions of this ordinance itself. So I'm not aware of the connection to that. Maybe.
Yeah.
Well,
If I can add to that a little bit. So we don't necessarily have that trespass capability on public right of way. So that's one thing to keep in mind. That's why we are looking to pursue a future vacation of the roadway, which would turn that over to private property owners, which would then open it up to private property rights to be able to do trespassing.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Goff. The city attorney just showed up on my screen. Do you have anything to add?
Director Gaub answered the question, but thank you, Councilmember Stearns. I was just noting that we have trespass capabilities, but they are subject to the Boise case, and there are private property owners that can act more efficiently and quickly in some circumstances when appropriate. So Director Gaub had covered that as part of the discussion about this.
Thank you. Next, Council Member Baldwin.
Thank you, Councilmember Stearns. Just one question about logistics is once the gate is in place until it gets reverted back to private property, if there needs to be any maintenance on the gate or if the gate has issues when it's constructed or any things like that, will that fall to the person who volunteered as noted?
So, no, that's a great question. And those details haven't been negotiated yet and established with that property owner. I really wanted to make sure that we get in front of the council first and hear if we're going to pursue this ordinance before we start getting into those details. But yes, that will be something that will be looked at. Obviously, it would be ideal that the gate would be maintained by the property owners, but that obviously would need to be part of the upcoming discussions.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think it looks good, but I would just make sure that maintenance is in the discussion. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Baldwin. Councilmember Baggett.
Thank you, Councilmember Stearns. Just want to pass along some compliments that we received from some of the previous homeowners out here in our area that have been complaining about the number of vehicles parked out there and the trash and the garbage. And it has all been cleaned up. And we got a call back from 2 of those homeowners thanking us and the city to doing that. So please pass along our thanks to your staff and let them know that they are very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to point out, it was not just Public Works staff. It was a multi-department effort to do that cleanup for that roadway, which is another reason why we don't want to go down that path
A
again.
team effort, a team effort.
Very
right?
much a team effort across multiple departments.
Good.
Great, a heavy lift. So thank you all for that. I just quickly add that, you know, and on that map, you probably could see where Mill Creek was. And, you know, that's something that our city and our staff are really working on is salmon recovery. So, you know, cleaning up M Street and, you know, protecting it really will also really benefit the salmon as we, you know, hope to welcome them back more and more. So now we have the end of the year capital project status report. And I will once again turn it over to Director Gall.
All right, thank you. And I am going to once again turn it over to staff to do a quick presentation for you. So we have with us tonight Matt Larson, who is our senior project engineer, to go over a summary of what we did in 2021 and talk a little bit about what's coming in 2022. Matt, go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, good evening, Mayor and City Council. I will start by providing some general statistics for projects that began construction this year. So this graphic illustrates the total number of construction contracts procured by year in the last 5 years, the total project value and the total project value for those projects. So in looking at last year, 2021, which is the last column on the right of this graph, that 18 construction contracts were procured at a total value of approximately $26.7 million. You can use this graph to easily compare last year's project delivery against previous 4. As you can see, there's been another busy year for us in the capital projects group. So one question that you might be having is that what does $26.7 million of total project value give us? So this slide sort of goes over to that. So we have nearly That $26.7 million provides nearly 10 lane miles of preserved or reconstructed roadway pavement, a new traffic signal in our downtown at the Auburn Way North and First Street Northeast intersection, installing and replacing over 4,600 linear feet of sidewalk, 109 curb ramps to meet ADA requirements. On the utility side, we are replacing almost 14,000 feet of water main, nearly 2,500 linear feet of storm, 2,600 feet of sanitary sewer, and a complete replacement of a water pump station facility. So with all of the design and construction activity that we have going on throughout the year, you might be wondering what was the best way to stay informed as council. And we have a few ways to help you out on that. One really convenient way is through our capital project status report that's emailed out to council at the beginning of every month. You should see the first monthly report of the new year hit your email inbox tomorrow morning. We also provide updates to council through study session presentations like this one. These updates are provided on a quarterly basis. But if you need information about a project on demand, we have a tool for that as well. Our interactive project mapping tool is located on the city's website, and you can navigate to it with just a few clicks. There's a link to it in the PDF of this presentation. We also provide a link with our monthly report email, and the photo on the right of this slide is a screenshot of what that tool looks like. The tool is very interactive, allows you to select individual projects, view general information about them, and then if you have specific questions, it provides contact information for the project manager who is assigned to that project. So you can reach out to them directly and get any questions that you need answered. Another way that you can stay informed would be through our traffic advisory notices. Similar to the capital projects interactive map, we have an interactive traffic advisory mapping tool. This tool is located on the city's website, and you can find it by selecting the traffic conditions tab under the business heading on the main page. The photo on the right of this screen is a screenshot of the map, what it looks like. And when a project impacts heavier used roadways or pedestrian paths, we will post an advisory to this site indicating what impacts are and for how long. You can also sign up to receive traffic advisories via email or text message as soon as a new advisory is posted. All right, so moving on to the capital project status report for the month ending in December 2021. The capital projects team currently have 43 active projects totaling approximately $87 million in total project value. Of those 43 projects, 24 are in various stages of design. 19 of them are in some form of construction. And for the remainder of this presentation, I want to focus on a few specific projects contained in the report. This is the Lee Hill Road Bridge Deck Preservation. If you want to look at it, it's page 69 of your packet. This project, which is entirely funded with federal grant money, was one of our feature capital projects last fall and is currently in construction. However, the construction work has been suspended until the spring, where we have warmer, drier weather that's needed in order to complete the work. The project will replace the expansion joints across the bridge deck, remove the top layer of bridge deck, seal cracks, perform some isolated deck repair, and then once that work is complete, the contractor will place a thin concrete overlay to finish the preservation work. Depending on the weather, we hope to resume this work in April. And our contractor for this project is Combined Construction. The next project is very similar. In fact, it is combined with the previous project. This is the 3rd Street Southwest Bridge Deck Preservation Project. This project is also fully funded with federal grant money. And as I said, this was combined in construction with the previous project. It's very similar in work. And this project will remove debris and thoroughly clean the bridge decks and then apply a protective resin sealer over the top. And like the previous project, we anticipate resuming construction work in April as well, weather dependent. Next project is Second Street Southeast Preservation. This project is partially funded with Transportation Improvement Board grants to help reconstruct Second Street Southeast from A Street to Auburn Way South. In addition to reconstructing the roadway, the project will also include some street lighting improvements, approximately 450 feet of sewer improvements, some storm drainage improvement, and it will upgrade curb ramps, including crosswalks. The project is currently finishing design and is expected to enter the construction phase in February. Next project is 4th Street Preservation, page 72 of your packet. This project is also partially funded with TIB, Transportation Improvement Board grant. The purpose of this project is to help preserve and reconstruct 4th Street Southeast from Auburn Way South to L Street. In addition to preserving and reconstructing 4th Street, the project will also replace almost 1,000 feet of sanitary sewer pipe, replace over 1,700 feet of water main, and 2,300 feet of storm drainage. It'll replace sections of sidewalk, replace curb ramps, and improve street lighting. This project is currently advertising for construction bids, and we anticipate this project going into construction in February. Next, we have the Regional Growth Center Access Improvement Project. This project is in partnership with Sound Transit. We're currently in the design phase. The project is located on Auburn Avenue, generally between 3rd Street Northeast and 4th Street Northeast. The project improvements include replacing the traffic signal at Auburn Ave and 3rd Street, which will allow for a new left turn pocket from Auburn Avenue onto 3rd Street. The project also includes some pedestrian connectivity improvements, including a new crosswalk at 3rd Street and some traffic signal modifications to the signal at Auburn Way North and 4th. Design is expected to continue through 2022 with construction in 2023. Next project is the Community Center Parking Lot Improvement Project. This is on page 74 of your packet. This project is replacing the main drive aisle through the parking lot of the community center. The existing pervious concrete pavement is failing and it needs to be replaced. We will be replacing the existing pervious concrete surface with a standard hot mix asphalt pavement. We felt it was important to mention in this project, in this presentation, because this one's going to have some temporary impacts or delays to accessing the parking lot at Lescove campus. Design of this project is wrapping up and construction is anticipated to begin in the spring of this year. Lastly, we have the R Street Southeast, 29th Street Southeast intersection improvement project. This project will implement the preferred alternative that was selected as part of a study of the R Street corridor. That study was completed in early 2020. The project will add a new southbound through lane on R Street from 22nd to 33rd Street Southeast, reconfigure and replace the traffic signal at 29th. Utility improvements include nearly 2,800 feet of water main replacement, 2,800 feet of storm drainage, and some sanitary sewer improvements. Design is just getting underway. Construction is not anticipated until 2024, but this is a significant project that will have great benefits to the city. That is all of the presentation I have. If there's any questions, exit. Sharing.
Well, thank you very much, Matt, and thanks in advance for the monthly update. We'll get tomorrow. Council, do we have any questions? Well, I don't see any. Again, it must be just due to the outstanding nature of your presentation. So fantastic. Thank you very much. I will now, we'll go to the last item on the agenda, which will be an introduction to a place we call The Bridges. And for that, that sounds really exotic, and it may be exotic, but for that, I'll turn it over to Director Tate.
Thank you and good evening, Council, Deputy Mayor, and Mayor. Yeah, very exotic location. First of all, I would like to orient Council to page 77 in your packet. The packet materials, there's only 3 or 4 pages, but they include some good visuals and a few pieces of data that I think are interesting and help summarize the Bridges community and what's going on right now with the Bridges community. And this is a presentation that is very similar to one that I provided about 2 years ago. And the reason I'm providing the same presentation or a very similar presentation again today is because we're going to talk a lot more about the Bridges in 2022 as a community, whether that's staff or engaging with residents within the community, city council conversations, and potentially some decisions. And the city of Kent is doing the same thing. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how we work with the city of Kent as well. So this is really to tee up future discussions so that nobody is having to figure out what the Bridges is, that community is, and what these conversations are. You have some background and in the coming months. So first of all, on page 77, you'll see a general kind of map of Auburn. It's the north half of Auburn. And that map shows a blue area within Auburn, and that is the Bridges community. It's up on Lee Hill, and it is incorporated into the city of Kent. So not every day will, and not in every city, in fact, it's pretty rare, will you see an island of one city surrounded by, fully surrounded by another city. So in my packet, I've provided a little bit of background information of why that happened. So back in 1987, the city of Kent annexed that area into its municipal or its corporate limits. At that time, they were basically annexing an area that wasn't contiguous to their own city, but they had municipal purpose for that piece of property. And over time, the need or the originally intended need for that property has changed. And at the same time that's happened, the city of Auburn back in 2008 annexed a large area of Lee Hill, and that's what created the island. So that's when it became surrounded by the city of Auburn. On page 78 of your packet, you'll see a kind of a zoom in of both the lot layout within the Bridges as well as an aerial photograph of the Bridges. And hopefully that gives you a good sense of what's inside of this community. And as I say, I won't read through the packet materials, but I think it's important to just point out that within that community on the north and west side of the Bridges are 386 single-family residential lots. Most of those have already been developed. There's a few remaining, but most have been developed with homes already. There's a big chunk of open space, a couple disconnected pieces of open space that are within the Bridges community. About 55, 60 acres or so. And there are some maps that show sort of the general area of where those open space tracts are. And within the open space tracts, there's environmentally sensitive areas as well as some passive recreational improvements like trails for people to walk through those areas. And then notably on the southeast area of this Bridges community, there's about 13 acres or so of land that has yet to be developed, and it is developable. So sort of a lot going on in this community. It was created by the city of Kent under something called a planned unit development, or PUD. And a planned unit development in concept is where you take a big chunk of land and you really plan it out, as its name infers. You really plan it out in a way that's different than how you would just apply traditional zoning or the way the zoning code would apply to a piece of property. It's a commonly used technique for communities to create just what the Bridges is, a community of residential, kind of clustered in different areas, more open space and recreational opportunity. And as is the case in this particular PUD, a little bit of commercial opportunity as well. So for those of you that are familiar with Lee Hill and have been up there, the area that is developable and that still allows for a little bit of commercial opportunity that's never been constructed yet is right next to the roundabout. So if you've been up at that roundabout and you're driving kind of from downtown and going, you're going towards the roundabout, it's right on your left-hand side as you approach the roundabout. It's always been kind of an area where there's been lots of questions and lots of confusion. People who live in the Bridges have an Auburn zip code. They have some utility service by Auburn. Folks oftentimes think that they live in Auburn, even if they are living in Kent. So there's confusion that gets created up there just by the sheer nature of it being an island. So a couple of years ago, the city of Kent and the city of Auburn began talking in earnest. I mean, I think it's been talked about not in very great detail for years, but I think in earnest has started talking about what does it look like if that area were annexed from or de-annexed from the city of Kent and annexed into the city of Auburn. And as a map change, that's super simple. I mean, you look at the map and you wonder, why is there this island there? And it's not hard to process a map amendment. But what really is complicated are all the other things that come with it. And I'll just list off a few of those. The bullet points that are there in the memo go into more detail, but a couple of examples of areas where you really have to dig deep and understand is first of all, I'll say with like land use, how could that 13 acres in the future be developed? By annexing into the city of Auburn, is it city of Auburn standards that now get applied to that piece of property? Or is there some vested nature of the former PUD that was approved by the city of Kent years ago? So that question in and of itself has resulted in many hours of discussion between Kent and Auburn and the property owner, frankly. The property owner's name is Oak Point. And there have been a number of conversations about what does that look like? There's a wetland there. Is a future development vested to the old wetland standards that were part of the PUD approval? Or do you apply the modern day current city of Auburn standards for wetland protection? There's storm standards, there's zoning standards. And then we've done this before, so we have some templates to work off of, but what does it look like when pending applications that are being processed by the city of Kent, how do you hand those over if it were annexed into the city of Auburn? So there's these mechanical pieces that you have to sort of talk through and figure out. Another area that's deserved or resulted in an immense amount of time and hours is more on the public works side of things. If de-annexation and annexation occurs, there are things that the city inherits, like roads. What are the condition of the roads? What are the condition of sidewalks? What are the conditions of other utilities? It's called the Bridges. There is a bridge in that community, and there's a dam in that community, and they're regulated differently, and they have a certain level of inspection standard that is required at a higher level than Auburn, where bridges need to be inspected and dams need to be inspected, and those inspections need to be filed and reported. And what kind of I don't want to say it's a burden because that makes it sound very negative, but you have to know what you're inheriting, what the cost is, what the historical records are, what the future requirements are going to be. And then also the city of Kent and the city of Auburn have some different standards as it relates to the utilities that we have in our communities. And one's not better than the other. I won't say that, but they're different. So if you're going out, and maybe I'm using a bad example, I'll rely upon Ingrid to correct me, but if you're going out and having to maintain a storm pond, and you need to replace a storm filter in that pond. Is that a storm filter that we have in our community already? The model, the type, how much does it cost? Do we have an inventory of those? You have to kind of get into those level of details to see what is compatible and what's not compatible. And when you get to those areas that are not compatible, you have to have conversations about how to overcome that. It's not that they can't be overcome, but we have to be strategic and have a full picture of what we would be taking on as the receiving city. And that's just city to city dialogue. That doesn't even get into the fact that there's a whole community that's affected. And what is their take? So, I mean, we have to have at a certain point a good, robust level of community dialogue with those who would be affected by a de-annexation and annexation. Now, there's nothing like really secret in these conversations. It's not like they're really happening behind the scenes. There are customers or residents who live in those areas, and we're being honest with them to say we're talking about this idea. We still have to come back and do a lot of work to move an idea forward. And I feel like in the last 2 years, what is safe to say today is that we've checked a lot of boxes on an ability to move forward with a conversation that involves both city councils, that involves the community, and kind of gets it just out of the technical level that staff has been talking to each other on. And again, really just wanted to tee this item up, say that we're probably at a point where we're going to be bringing forward more agenda items, agenda bills, and potential resolutions and ordinances in the coming 12 months for city council consideration. And that is happening with the Kent City Council as well. We're trying to be really careful as well between City of Kent staff and City of Auburn staff to make sure that none of our councils or the community are surprised by anything. We don't want the City of Kent or the City of Auburn to have a council discussion that's in depth and really meaningful, really substantive, and have the other council learn about it the wrong way. So we're trying to think about how we would time the discussion so that they're happening approximately at the same time. Who knows? Perhaps there's joint meetings in the future. I'm not sure. But we want to be sensitive to that too, so that nobody feels like, hey, I didn't know about this, and why am I hearing about it from a constituent, and all that kind of stuff that never makes anybody feel good or never makes us as staff look good. So I think that's where I'll sort of leave it, and certainly happy to answer any questions that anybody might have about what we know about this community, and if there's a process question or anything like that, happy to answer.
Thank you, Director Tate. That's a fantastic introduction. And as you mentioned, we'll be coming back to this issue again and again throughout the year, so we don't have to answer every question tonight. But with that, I will throw it open and for questions. So, Deputy Mayor Jayraj. You are muted, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Stearns. So how far apart are we in the agreement process as far as checking the boxes on both sides?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll say this. I mean, gosh, there's a lot of elements to this, and we're anxious to talk in more detail to council, but I guess I'll put it this way. If we were far apart, probably wouldn't be presenting this evening. And I don't mean to sound flippant about that or disrespectful, but that's the reality. We see that there's a likelihood that there's going to be conversations because we feel like we've not cleared the deck on issues. There's still some issues to work through and talk about. But we've checked, we've probably checked a couple dozen boxes in terms of our ability to walk through and sort of problem solve and understand. Sometimes it's just collecting information from the City of Kent, having time to analyze it, And it may not even lead to a question. It's just us having solid understanding of the community.
That's good. Thank you, Director Tate.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. City Attorney Como.
I'm available to answer any questions should any arise, Councilmember Stearns. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I saw you pop up on the screen again. Council Member Brown.
Thank you, Council Member Stearns. I'm curious, what level of exploration has there been or evaluation of any potential environmental legacy situations?
Yeah, I hope I'm answering your question as you intended. There's a couple things I'll say about legacy or things that we've been asking questions about and trying to understand. One is, I think there's two parts that I would say about this. One is there's the open space tracts, and the open space, when you own open space, there definitely is a financial and resource burden associated with that, whether it's illegal dumping that occurs, noxious weeds that root themselves in an area like this, trees that might lean over and cause a threat to a structure or something like that. We have that. So we've been evaluating that, and we've been exploring ideas like the ability to maybe move the open space property into ownership potentially that would be different than the city of Kent, maybe a nonprofit or a conservation group or something like that. So we've talked about that. The other thing that we've talked about that was a heavy item was how future development would be treated on that 13-acre piece of property. And the property owner, we were worried about that because we felt that in the city of Auburn, our standards, same in the city of Kent, we've changed our rules since the time that the PUD was approved. So the PUD was approved with a certain wetland buffer size. And we were a little nervous about that because does that vest forever? Does that move forward? We just didn't know how to handle that. And I'll tell you this, without getting into all the technicalities of that, the property owner did a new wetland analysis, which is really helpful. And it was helpful to both in terms of understanding what the wetland is and how it would be treated under modern day codes. Those kinds of bits of information. That's one of those things that are kind of clear and helping clear the deck. We now understand more. The property owner, Oak Point, has been forthcoming and, with the desire to participate in that conversation, provide meaningful information that helps us understand all of that. So I don't know if that's what you mean by legacy. That's probably the extent to how I could think about how to answer that question.
Yeah, I think you answered it. I've been involved in some land transfer situations where people that are receiving the land through purchase or exchange could be saddled with the impact of pollution in terms of the cleanup costs. So that was kind of what I was looking at.
And I don't think that we have any reason to be concerned about that kind of potential impact of having to clean up something that's not in good shape. It's really probably more the ongoing maintenance, which are pretty typical costs and resource demands that we have when we own land, but nothing of particular significance that we've heard anything about.
No industrial operations there, I take it.
Nothing like that.
Thank you.
No bodies buried underneath the dam. Okay, great. How about Council Member Baldwin?
Thank you, Councilmember Stearns. Just one question with regards to the infrastructure in that area. As you were looking at the streets and city lights and all of that, has there been any indication in what you've seen to date that there's been deferred maintenance that might be stacking up in that space, or same as what everybody else has?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question that we spend a lot of time talking about because we don't want any surprises later on. And I think I'll ask my colleague Ingrid to help with that because it's really been her team that has at least started some of that evaluation. So Ingrid, can you help?
I sure can. So that's a great question, Councilmember Baldwin. It is something that we are concerned about, is making sure that the infrastructure that we get, what's the current condition of that infrastructure? Has it been inspected? Has it been cleaned? When was the last time it was maintained? So we've been going through gathering all of those records with the city of Kent and working through that information on that infrastructure. So as we go forward, that would be something that, again, we continue to look at. And as we actually get through that final review of kind of where everything is at, we would bring forward kind of what are the potential implications to Public Works for that long-term maintenance of the systems. As Jeff mentioned, some of our standards differ a little bit from Kent standards. So not every road within the bridges is actually a public road. So some of that is actually the private property owners that are responsible for that. So getting a good understanding of what actually becomes the cities and what would stay with the private property owners there is also another element that we're going through with the city of Kent.
Okay, so more to come.
Yes.
Okay. And I think we could do well if we build this a bit as a crossover episode, if you guys, follow superheroes at all.
Got it. Thank you.
Plenty of intrigue involving this new development. I was thinking of like the Battle of Kingdoms in The Witcher. Anyway, I don't. Is there a question? Is there any more questions? If not, thank you so much, Director Tate. That was fantastic. And I believe that concludes my portion. So I'll return the whole thing over to our Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Chair Stearns. Appreciate it. That was a very enlightening few city codes. Anyway, if we don't have any new business or any other discussions, the meeting is now adjourned. Oh, hold it. Bob Baggett.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to provide some emphasis on homelessness in our city. And I know that the mayor and the staff and the directors are all working towards this as they can and as the laws of the land will allow. But a week or two ago, I had all the compliments and I had all the harassment, if you will, from some of the homeowners verbally on the phone, emails, and what have you in person about the M Street parking lot out there. And we got the praise from a couple of the homeowners that we did a great job as a city. But I wanted to draw your attention to another blight that we have on our neighborhood, and that's on 41st Street. 41st Street is on the north side of that street is completely taken up with encampments of homeless people. I stopped by there day before yesterday, took a lot of pictures, and talked to some of the people there and encouraged them to take advantage of our Auburn Resource Center. I told them what they had available down there and encouraged them to go down and take a visit of it. But these people have actually taken over that entire side of that street for the entire block. And we are getting, I have received personally no less than half a dozen phone calls, emails, and personal contacts, I might add, from not only homeowners, but property owners on the south side of the street, are residential areas, and also a couple of businesses there. And the actual business people have complained that they're losing business because of the blight that's on the other side of the street and the trash and all of the things that go along with it. It also travels down into I Street, just north of 41st, where we have a continuous encampment of RVs and what have you, and the associated trash that goes with it. Not quite as bad as it was out there on that M Street thing that Jacob had shown us, but it won't take long before that, and 41st Street is going to look just like that. So I wanted to implore our mayor, our staff, and anybody else that can do anything out there. I know that a lot of people are working this problem. I know Kent's doing a great job when he can. He's a one-stop shop himself, but he's a one-man operation. And we funded budgets this year for an additional person to assist him. And I hope that's taken place. But we need to do something about this and other areas within the city. And I'm really, I love the city just like the mayor, and I'm sure most all of our council members feel the same way. But it's taken over our city in many areas, and we need to do something about it and just stop talking about it. I know that we're constrained to some degrees by legislation. And I know that we are only allowed to do certain things, and our police are hampered as well. But we really need to get off the subject of talking about it and doing something about it. And I'm pleading with everybody to just, if you haven't been out there and looked at that area, please do so. And let's get this ball rolling so we can do something for our city. Too many people and living here are talking about moving out of our city. And I think that, as one council member, I can't do a lot of this myself, but I can bring it to everybody's attention. And maybe with a little emphasis, we can get the ball rolling again. So please take care of this, and soon. Thank you.
Mayor, you're up next.
Councilmember Baggett, I can assure you that we are not just talking about it. As you mentioned, there are some challenges in being able to simply move people along or to deal with the garbage until we are able to move people. There are laws that we have created in the city of Auburn to accommodate the parking on the streets for 24 hours versus the previous 72. But at this point in time, given some of the state legislation, we are unable to do what we would like to do. There is also, if you recall, the Homestead Act that does not allow us to tow a motor vehicle or any other vehicle if the people in that vehicle say that it is their home. We cannot do.
I understand that, Mayor, and with all due respect.
I still have the floor, Councilmember Baggett. Thank you. We don't just sit here and say, oh, we should do something about this. As you mentioned, Kent Hay, our outreach administrator, is out there quite often. Our police officers also go out there. Some of our nonprofits, I believe that the Salvation Army has gone out there. We don't just sit back and talk about it. There are actions taking place every day. However, it is not as simple as saying, let's work on this and we're going to get everybody into housing and get all of the RVs and the cars moved. We are working on it. And to say other than that is erroneous.
If I may rebuttal to that, I realize we're doing more than just talking about it. I realize that. But and the wheels of government do work slowly. I know our hands are tied in many respects by our legislature, and I know that we are doing what we can. But even if the police officers can go around and talk to these people about moving on, they don't have to tow their vehicles. They can at least bring it to their attention.
Councilmember Baggett, I can assure you that that occurs.
Okay.
Got a bunch of hands up there, Deputy Mayor.
Councilmember Trout Manuel.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councilmember Beckett, I agree with you as well, but as the mayor said, I just met the captain from the Salvation Army. And I was surprised that he said he's got boots on the grounds in Auburn, helping out the police department and also Ken Hay. They've invited me to go with them when they're in town. And so they said that they're really going and they're speaking to a lot of our homeless people to try to get them out of the weather. But that's still, you know, there's just a few boots on the ground helping Ken. But I do feel that we need to get those huge places where you mentioned, I've driven over there where you mentioned, and it is, the trash is piling up like the way M Street is. But it's good to know that there are some people out there, nonprofit organization, working with our police department and also helping Ken. So I just wanted to relate what the mayor said about that. And I do agree with the homeless issue is huge in our area, but I guess it's going to just be little bit by a little bit before we can get that, get them in the situation where they're ready to go into a home if we offered it to them. Thank you.
Councilmember Stearns.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to just express my thanks to the city for doing everything they're doing, and including Ken Hay. I mean, you know, you're talking about people who, you know, are human beings, and you know, we want to treat them with dignity. And enough people have expressed their opinion through their lawmakers that you know, there is a right process to follow. So you know, the problem is really big, and it's almost, I want to say, intractable. But I do have faith that, you know, we can, as a city, as a society, as a region, you know, make more headway into solving homelessness. But I just really, you know, I certainly appreciate what Councilmember Baggett had to say, but I also just want to underscore how grateful I am to the city and all the efforts they are taking right now to make a dent in this.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Jairaj, I appreciate what I've heard everyone say the area of dealing with homelessness in Auburn. My question is, for the folks who are living in RVs, who are living in their vehicles, it's one thing to ask them to move or to relocate, but I think it's our responsibility as council to be able to give them a place where they can go and where they can take their vehicles and be in a safe space where they can have a little bit of consistency and not having to worry about moving on a daily basis, where we can provide city services, get a dump, get porta-johns if we need it, you know, allow them to, you know, put their garbage in a place appropriately. It's one thing to come and empty a dumpster versus having to go clean it up along the street. So what I would like, if we could, would be to identify for the city-owned parcels and tracts of land where we could find a place that these people could be and receive some initial level of services, and to look at that and evaluate that as a course of action. As a city, we have property, and I would think that we could look at those properties and those parcels and identify an area that could be developed in that space.
Mayor Backus.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Jairaj. We will have Kent come back for another update on the efforts of him, the opportunity for us to hire an additional person, as well as the reasons behind not wanting to provide. There is safe parking that occurs down at the Auburn Consolidated Resource Center, and that is done through the Ray of Hope and the Sundown Overnight Shelter. There is accountability involved in all aspects of this. Everyone is accountable. The government, those who are providing the funding, those who are providing the services, and those who are receiving the services. And that is one of the things that we will always stand by, is the accountability aspect for everyone involved. We do not hand out sandwiches. We do not hand out sleeping bags. We do not hand out blankets. When Kent Hay goes out into the encampments, he offers them an opportunity for services. He does not bring them things. He expects accountability from them as well. If he has an appointment scheduled for them, he expects them to be able to be present. And he does everything he can to ensure that they are wherever they are supposed to be. We do have some nonprofits in the area who work very well with Kent and the philosophy that we have on working with individuals experiencing homelessness in our community. We're more than happy to provide an additional presentation on all of the efforts that are taking place in our city. I do know that some of our council members, Council Members Brown, Stearns, and Trout Manuel, and Deputy Mayor J. Raj, have all gone out with Kent at least one time to see exactly what he's dealing with on a regular basis. For us, we may think that if someone came up and offered us shelter, we would jump at the chance to have that shelter. That is not the case when you're dealing with individuals who are chronically homeless. That is one additional opportunity for trauma for them. It takes time, it takes skills, it takes resources, and that's what Kent is working with, to build relationships with these individuals. During the recent weather event, we were not made aware, but there was a nonprofit that came in and provided hotel space for some of the individuals who were either in the encampments or in some of the motorhomes. Kent knew these individuals. And unfortunately, what happened when this nonprofit put these individuals into hotel rooms, they trashed the hotel rooms. Kent would have never put them in those hotel rooms because he knows them, he works with them on a daily basis. That's what we're dealing with, is well-intended individuals and nonprofits who come into this city without working with us, without knowing the system that we have in place that works incredibly well. By the way, during the weather event, the city of Auburn was able to shelter through the Ray of Hope and the Sundown and emergency shelter more than any other city around us, by quadruple at least the numbers. So there is a lot that Auburn is doing right. And to say that we are sitting back and just talking about it is an insult, and one that I refuse to accept.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You can tell that this is a subject that's important to our community, to our council members, to our mayor. And it is a subject that is not solved with quick and simple answers. I do know that Mayor Backus, for example, serves on regional initiatives to work on this issue. I know that Kent Hay goes to work every day to help bring people in and provide services. I know that this council is very strongly in favor of doing everything that we can. But I do think that this council would probably benefit from a comprehensive presentation at one of our upcoming study sessions, and hope that Deputy Mayor, working with the mayor, you can help us set that up, because we all have more to learn on this. Thank you.
Next is Councilmember Baggett.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Again, I want to make it very clear that I'm not disrespectful of all the efforts that our city is going through right now. And when I use the words about quit talking about it and start doing something, maybe that was a little too harsh, but the point is we can do more. We can do more as a city. And I think that we have enough things going on in the city right now that are tying our hands, our police, tying Kent's hand, what he can do, what he can't do, our mayor as well. And again, I do not mean to be disrespectful of any of the staff and the people that are working in our city, because I have nothing but the best intentions of making sure they understand that my feelings are with them, and I appreciate everything that they're doing. It's just that this has been going on over in that area for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And I just think that whatever we can do to get the wheels turning, we cleaned up B Street under the overpass because it took a little bit of effort from everybody's part to get that done. And I thank everybody that was involved in that. But some of these groups are transient. They're moving from place to place. They don't want a roof over their head. Many of them don't. They want the freedom of being out there in the wild areas, especially when we're having bad weather like we had. And I really feel sorry for these people that have had to endure those kind of things. And I assured the people that I spoke with over there about the resource center that, it's there for their use. They didn't even know anything about it. Okay. So this may have been an area that Kent had not touched on yet. And I think I agree wholeheartedly with the council member Brown that I think a comprehensive review update, if you will, from Kent would be in order. And I would applaud the mayor for making that happen. Thank you.
Council Member Baldwin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I agree with Councilmember Baggett that there's been incredible work that has happened in Auburn, and I don't mean to disregard that with my comments either. As far as moving and looking towards action and what the city can do, for every individual who might not be ready to be provided with an overnight in a hotel, I do believe that there are people who are using RVs and who are using cars, who are living in those places that already are working, already have jobs, already have licenses. And so for those individuals who simply need an area of stability, I think that there's room to look at the different facets of homelessness and to figure out where we can best help each area. And so when I brought up my suggestions was specifically within regards to those folks who just need a little bit of chance to get their feet under them. So, and I would love to have additional information as with everything if you can't tell by my questions. Thank you.
You're up next, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councilmember Baldwin, just so you know, we do work with our faith-based community and talking with them about modeling what Kent did when he was up in Redmond for safe parking. But again, if there is safe parking, there is an expectation that there is a limit amount of time that individuals would be able to stay there, that they must be working on exiting homelessness in order to have that safe parking space. So again, accountability is key in everything that we do, and we will find time appropriately on an upcoming study session to provide a comprehensive update, because it's been a while since you've had one, on all things that we are doing related to homelessness and the dollars that are being spent as well.
Thank you, Mayor. If there's no other discussions, the meeting is now